Assalamualaikum and good day to Honorable Prof.Dr.Hairuddin Muhammad Ali and to all my respected fellow. Before we discuss on the topic of controlling, let me introduce the members of the group. My name is Nozi binti Muhammad Noor, and working together with me, my great teammate Ms. Nur Hafiza binti Nauman, Ms. Irna Hadiana binti Jumat, Ms. Ummu Aima binti Murteza, and Ms. Nur Iza binti Jufri. We are going to discuss on the topic of controlling. We will give you an introduction, standards for control, approaches to controlling activity, process and the principles, types and method of control, and we will see controlling from the Islamic perspective, and last but not least, the management complication. To have a better understanding of control, our objective of the presentations are to explain the meaning, approaches, process and principles of controlling, to discuss the type and methods of control, to explain the controlling from Islamic perspective, and to explain the management and implication. For the first part of our presentation, I will explain the meaning, approaches, process, and principles of controlling. So, what is meant by controlling? The term of controlling, if we refer to the dictionary, it can be defined as determine the behavior or supervise the running of. The word of control was rooted from French, contre means against. In the discipline of management, Kuhn and Donnell 1972 define control as the measuring and correcting of activities of subordinates to assure that event is conform to plan. Richard L. Duff 1994 revised the terms of controlling as management function concerned with the monitor employees' activities, keeping the organization on track towards its goals and making correction as needed. Controlling is the fourth function in the management process. Planning at the managerial as well as act on operational manager is a process with future aim and steps to be taken for its achievement. Control, in the other hand, is the process of monitoring the various activities being carried out to ensure the determined objective being accomplished. The importance of controlling are: number one, control can avoid and prevent the unexpected or unpleasant output. Control is important because it lets the manager avoid mistakes, and more importantly, it helps them cope with the changes, create add values of an organization, and facilitates delegation and teamwork. Organization must have check and balance mechanism in place for an effective control system. In the absence of effective control system, an organization may be jeopardized. In the past, controlling took place in an organization annually from the year-end financial report. In between the year, little information was prepared to indicate performance of the business. Practical of control imposed on the shop floor level on the staff and sales representative. The exercise of control was carried out specifically due to its importance for the purpose and benefit of the operation. Nowadays, in current practice, control being exercised in every aspect of an organization function and levels. Concept of standard. Effective control ensures the input of effort at all levels of an organization met with the requirement for the achievement of the goals of the management, as well as those of the sectional function throughout an organization. James A. F. Stoner 1992 claimed controlling involving main elements of establishing standard and method for measuring output of program or performance, measuring current performance, comparing the performance to the established standard, and if illumination detected, taking corrective action. A prerequisite of control is a standard against which performance can be measured. If there are no standards set, there will be no effective measurement of performance. The standard for all levels of management supervision must be set at the planning stage. This will reflect the required performance for each activity. The concept of standard is divided into two broad categories: standard for quantitative control and standard for qualitative control. Standard for quantitative control. This standard have a specific measure to meet accordingly. We can see this standard normally applied for common activities such as sales, production, machine utilization, and any activities that quantitatively can be measured. Therefore, it requires a coordination of relevant activities. The standard set are based on data derived from past performance for future possibilities, for example, production report, annual financial report, sales volume report. The measure is subjected of possible external influences, The standard scale of quality measured would be vary, for example, hours of machinery operated, monthly or yearly expenditure. The standard set are meaningful and it allows an interim adjustment can be made throughout the process. Standard for qualitative control. The standard used to cover all aspects of organization activities that cannot be quantified. The standard will extend to elastic in nature because it is difficult to control. Standard must be implemented but difficult to specify with particular provision. For example, customer satisfaction, business goodwill, and staff welfare. Monitoring performance would be required, so some mechanism must be advised and installed for each activities where performance can be observed and measured to the standard set. Monitoring performance is a vital part of the process of control, as it would be unrealistic to expect an ability to control any activity unless constantly monitored. The manner in which monitoring will be carried out would be much depend on the activity to be controlled. Time frame for monitoring and corrective action. In the event of persisting problem at the operational level, managed by supervisory level, it will be fast corrective action without delay. Whilst monitoring by report for feedback involving top management and stakeholder, corrective action is often a matter of the entire governing will take time. Approaches to controlling activity. Number 1. True legal approach. This is where the law of the land and a company provide a basis for checks on activities and performance. Number 2. Social and clan approach. The social pressures and a check on human behavior is considered as a basis for exercising control on activities of the individuals in an organization. And number 3. Market approach. The market forces demand and supply, and their manipulation is used for exerting pressure on the business behavior. Process of controlling. As can be seen on screen, this is a general controlling process taking place in an organization. Since control is an important part of the function of management, it causes unduly heavily burden on the person in charge according to the normal flow of controlling. F. W. Taylor suggested steps taken to ease the situation by applying technique exception principle EP or management by exception MBE. MBE relies for its efficient operation on regular reporting of matters and on well-defined operational limits. When activities proceed within the specific limit, no report are required to pass to manager concerned. In the case, activity exceeding the limit, exceptional report should be made for an investigation to be initiated. The ideal situation is whereby the necessary control is carried out human intervention. Human judgment can be taken into account by the use of program decision, depend on the feedback in order for appropriate steps to be taken to correct situation that is not proceeding according to plan. Therefore, a proper system of communication for management be established so that necessary reports can flow to the manager or supervisor responsible for the activity concerned with minimum delay. Principles of controlling. For control to operate truly effectively, it must be governed by firm's principles. Number 1. The method of control must be suitable for the activity it seeks to regulate. It should be the minimum required to achieve the desired result. Over-elaborated controls often lead to the system being ignored or distortion. Number 2. The cost of control installed should not exceed the amount they would save. Number 3. The type of industry or activity concerned must determine the required types of control. Number 4. Feedback information must be available to the controller in time for corrective actions to be taken before matters may go beyond control. Number 5. It is essential that corrective action be taken promptly and consistently when required, and such action must be reviewed, as it is most unwise to give subordinate the impression that they may ignore standard with impunity. Number 6. The exception principle should be applied wherever possible. Nevertheless, full backup information should be made available as required, even though this material may not normally be handed to the management. This should further, however, be filed only for limited periods. And the last principle would be areas of accountability and authority should be clearly defined to reduce any doubts in regards to the holder of responsibility for the various control activities. That's all from me. To discuss the type and methods of control, Ms. Irna will continue the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you to my colleague for her presentation. Now, I am Irna Harjana binti Jumat will continue the topic of types and methods of control. Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera to everyone, especially to Professor Dr. Hairuddin bin Muhammad Ali and of course my fellow friends. I hope everyone is doing fine tonight. Given that standards must be set and monitoring must be carried out to ensure that these standards are adhered to and deviations corrected as soon as possible, forms of regulating mechanism must be established. As suggested, this would depend upon the type and level of activity that is to be checked. Henceforth, various methods are being recommended as below. Their appropriateness is a matter for much consideration by the management. Policies and plans. To ensure that the above adhere to, written policy manuals would be required and regular reporting should be instituted to monitor the progress of the enterprise in respect of policy implementation and the satisfactory materializing of plans. Reports should emanate from the operating departments or divisions to the top management, and regular meetings with senior executives should be scheduled to examine and deliberate on the contents of the reports. Actions should be taken urgently to regulate any serious deviations. Similarly, departmental or divisional reporting to heads of department or division by middle and junior managers could be dealt with in the same manner. Other monitoring methods to be employed could be budgetary control, management by objectives, management by exception, and management by consequences. Effectiveness of delegations. The extent and limits of delegated authority and duties of managers and supervisors at all levels should be clearly confirmed in an organization as well as in procedure manuals. Internal management and procedure audits should be carried out in the same fashion, as should internal accounting audits and audit reports prepared for consideration by senior executives who are responsible for the activities of their subordinates. Operational effectiveness. Much monitoring and regulation of the performance of workers may be carried out on the spot by supervisors and foremen. This personal control is most immediate and most effective where small groups of workers are involved. Large groups usually require such methods as word cards, progress slips, time cards, and other forms of documentation. In the most factories, a system of progress chasing has been established to monitor and regulate the movement of work carried out in the various shops. This entails both the regular preparation of progress documents to the production planning office and personal inspection by progress chasers. Quality and quantity controls. Personal inspection by supervisors or quality control inspectors is necessary to control quality standards. They're applicable to work in the office or work on the production line. Quantity control is carried out by measuring the actual amount of work carried out by count, weight, or any other appropriate method, and by comparing these results with the standard set. Visual presentation of what is expected and what has been achieved is very often provided by charts or graphs. sales, and similar activities are more easily illustrated by graphs. A commonly used chart is the Gantt chart, which reveals the performance of the assembly workers and, in particular, draws attention to exceptional circumstances. For instance, in month 3, the low output of all three workers simultaneously indicates some common problem in the particular shop. Expenditure control. Both capital and revenue expenditures can be regulated through a budgetary control, which set limits to permissible expenditure on all aspects of organizational activities. At the departmental level, budgets would be covering sales expenditure, expenditure in regards to the production, administration, and so on. These budgets are to be incorporated in a master budget, which is the province of the top management and most senior executives. Reporting. Most monitoring of activities is done through reporting in one form or the other. To be effective and to ensure remedial action is taken with a minimum of delay, reports must be presented at the proper time and in an acceptable form. Thus, a specific day every week should be set aside for a cash flow report, whereas a production report may be required only once a month. Sales reports similarly are usually presented once every month. It has been established that proper control cannot be instituted and maintained unless prior standards, both quantitative and qualitative, as discussed above, have been set. Therefore, unless this is being done, there will be no basis for any comparison against which controls can be installed. However, though the basis for some standards are easy to measure, others may prove more difficult. Various methods for the controlling of the activities of organizations have been devised and put into practice, both in areas where control may be easy to carry out and also in instances where this may be more problematic. One of the most important and most commonly applied controls would be the budgetary control. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you for listening, and now I will pass to my colleague to explain more about budgetary control.
Assalamualaikum and selamat sejahtera. With me Nur Hafizah binti Rahman. Let's continue with our topic, budgetary controlling. An effective approach in controlling any organizational activities would be to set certain limits to expenditure. Managers responsible for various departments are required to examine closely any costs that they wish to incur. Khalid Ahmad, 2006. Meaning of budget. They have a few opinions regarding subject. We go through one by one. Budget is a method of the company current management defining the principle of planning and use of financial resources in order to effectively carry out the task of production. Komorowski, 1997. The term budgeting emphasizes its functional aspect, including the use of various methods and techniques with the preparation, execution, and control of budget. Komorowski, 1997. Budgeting encourages the conscious formation of revenues, expenses, expenditure, and other economic categories. Kizukiewicz, 1999. Now focus two types of budgets from modern secular vs Islamic perspective. From modern secular, budget have two types, current budget and capital budget. Current budget is prepared to meet current expenditure of civil administration, defense, debt servicing and other expenses of current nature. Capital budget is prepared to meet for capital expenditure of enduring nature such as building of infrastructure, educational institution and health facilities, telecommunication and others. From Islamic perspective, have two types budget, welfare budget and general budget. Welfare budget are zakat and sadaqah and it is expended on heads of expenditure mentioned in the Al-Quran. Zakat expenditures are only for the poor and for the need and for those employed to collect zakat and for bringing herds together for Islam and for freeing captives or slave and for those in debt and for the cause of Allah and for the stranded traveller on obligation imposed by Allah and Allah is knowing and wise, which concern mainly the welfare and relief of the poor and have-nots. General budget is financed through tax and non-tax revenues, while it is spent on all the current and capital expenditure of the state pertaining to its general and administrative activities. Advantage and disadvantage budget control. Advantage of budget control: the limit set on expenditure will create the benchmark to avoid extravagance and on poor view in terms of financial commitment. The preparation of budget requires all concerns to examine very closely the overall operation of their particular department. As all budgets are independent, budgetary control has a positive effect on coordination. Constant monitoring of budget performance and be achieved, a periodical budget review statement and regular meeting for control review. Disadvantage of budget control: budget function as monitoring, not regulator. Unnecessary expenditure will occur to utilize the budget surplus. Annual budget are based on budget figure of the previous year instead of formulated realistic for forecast. Separate budget for sectionalized requirement will create imbalance in the organization. Fluctuation price will make budget out of date very quickly. How to control budget statement? Prepare of budget. Prepare of budget very important in controlling expenditure. Step 2, control mechanism. Monthly statement review. The monthly statement would set out the portion of its annual budget appertaining to the months under review of each budget item and alongside each item, the actual expenditure and any variance from the budget, either higher or lesser. Step 3, budget commit. A budget commit is usually considered advisable to set up and to be composed by senior staff members including heads of department of their representative. Within such commit, budget statement can be deliberate, open and remedies discussed to ensure compliance with planned expenditure or any failure in revenue generation to be examined. That's all. Thank you for me.
Thank you to Sister Nurhafiza. Assalamualaikum and a very good day to my respected lecturer, Professor Dr. Hairuddin bin Muhammad Ali, and to all my friends. Today I want to present on controlling from the Islamic perspective. Before I begin, let me introduce the main objective of this subtopic. The main objective is to discuss the controlling function in Islamic perspective. Other objectives are to show the control model practiced by leader of the golden era of Islam. In this case, I will explain on Hazrat Umar radiallahu anh, on his control process, and lastly to present the distinction or the difference between controlling by Allah and controlling through technology. Now, let me recap the definition of controlling. According to Mr. C.P. Akpan, controlling is the process of ensuring that the organization is actually attaining its objectives as planned. It is the responsibility of the school administrator to make sure that activities are performed according to plan if the school goals are to be successfully achieved. He added in his study that the lack control by the school heads has brought the situation of the poor attitude of teachers to work, poor academic performance, and indiscipline of secondary students. Mr. Akpan stated it is not uncommon to observe that many principals neglect the school administrative process. In Islam, the foundation of control is very simple. According to Khalid Ahmad in his book, Management from an Islamic Perspective, the mechanism of internal or external control, business or personal, and social or legal control must not violate basic principles of the Sharia. As a school leader, one must follow what has stated in Al-Quran and Hadith. According to Abu Habish, the main concept remains true, and a prerequisite for any type of control is of the threefold as follows. Firstly, establishing a standard performance. Secondly, keeping the performers informed in this regard prior to their actions, and thirdly, taking remedial measures if required. Islamic approach is based on a scenario emerges from the source of revealed knowledge stated as follows. A messenger used to be sent by the King of all kingdoms, who is Allah, to the cities, group of people, or to the head of the community. The messenger communicated the message from Almighty and its requirements or standard setting. People received, and some of them understood the message which came down from Allah to the people. Many of them continued their old practices, shirk and denial, which were going against the delivered message, a perceived deviation from set standards. As remedial measure, Allah provided opportunity in this world for making tawbah, with each asking for forgiveness. Now let us move on to the control process practiced by Umar radiallahu anh. According to Professor Madya Dr. Madgolam et al., Hazrat Umar did not go to any management school for training, but his education, wisdom, and especially his company of the Prophet allowed him to master the art of management. Umar radiallahu anh used to clearly define a set of criteria for appointing leaders. Umar radiallahu anh used to extensively define the roles of his commanders and his governors, and he made sure that they followed his general direction while allowing them their operational freedom. Umar radiallahu anh first task is to explain to the appointee what he is expected to do. Then he has to check whether the appointee is doing what he was ordered to do. Umar do the checking over the performance of his appointees through his personal visits, intelligence agents, and the complaints received by the public. In cases where the appointees did not carry out their duties appropriately, Umar radiallahu anh did not hesitate to change them. Umar radiallahu anh was committed to continue improvement, and the process of improvement was facilitated by the culture or advice, as Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, religion is advice, which is practiced by Umar radiallahu anh through participative management programs. Now, let us look at 5 distinctions between controlling by Allah-fearing views and controlling through technology. The main point is taqwa, which means fear of Allah. Controlling through taqwa does not need extra force. It is an inner feeling which derives from fear of Allah, Taqwa with technology controlling will be excellent compared to technology-based controlling, which is the result of materialism. As a conclusion, Iman will drive the managers or the school heads to control the activities or performance to achieve the objectives based on the Sharia, as there is punishment and reward. The standard set by men are, however, always subject to revision due to human ignorance of the future, whereby, as in the view of Allah, matters are in a perfect state in times past and remains so in future. Let me end my presentation with Surah Al-Baqarah verse 286. Allah burdens not a person beyond his scope. He gets reward for that good which he has earned, and is punished for the evil he has earned. That's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Assalamualaikum and good evening to Professor and dear friends. My name is Nurul Izzah binti Jufri. I'm going to explain on the last slide the Islamic managerial implications as portrayed by Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radhiyallahu anhu. Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, the second Caliph of Ummah, did not attend any formal training of management school, but he had shown great examples on applying a good Islamic managerial to his subordinates. Control process practiced by Sayyidina Umar can be summarized as follows. Number 1. Sayyidina Umar set up a clear standard to be followed by his subordinates. Number 2. The standard must be well clarified and communicated to everyone. Number 3. The input for the standard should include required resources and skill training, as well as the required authority. Number 4. A continuous search for new approaches for the improvement of the performance should be carried out, such as the quality, participation, and involvement. Number 5. Both the performance and output are to be closely checked against the standards through an existing culture of commitment and involvement. Number 6. If the performance and output of the employees do not conform to the standard, corrective actions must be taken. Number 7. If the performance conforms to the standard, promotion or reward is to be considered. And lastly, number 8, if there is an approach for the improvement of the process, the necessary corrective actions should be taken. As the conclusion, the summary of this topic, controlling from the Islamic perspective are: controlling is the measuring and correcting of activities of subordinates to ensure that events conform to plans. Without implementing a control system, managers would not have the knowledge as to whether their units and employees are performing properly. Any management control system should follow these 3 steps. Number 1, setting a standard. Number 2, comparing performance with the standard set. And lastly, taking remedial measures. Listed below are the bibliography of reference of our group. On behalf of my friends, I would like to thank to all of you for lending your ears to listen to our presentation. Till we meet again, thank you and have a good day.